the latest 2023 horror thriller, Baghead, officially hits the screen. A beautiful woman inherits a dilapidated bar, only to discover a monster in the basement with a sack on its head, which can let you talk to your deceased loved ones but also brings terrible consequences. Without further ado, the film begins. Late at night, Neil knocks on the door of the rundown bar, telling the owner he wants to meet a woman and is willing to pay $2,000. But this time, the owner seems in a bad mood and kicks him out. That night, the owner, engulfed in flames, screams as he flees the bar's basement, but soon burns to death in the hallway. Strangely, the flames mysteriously disappear after his death. The next day, Iris receives a phone call and learns that her father, whom she hasn't spoken to in years, has been killed in a fire and tells her to go to the police station to claim the body. She flies back overnight, glances at the charred corpse, and immediately leaves. She has long lost any affection for her father, who had ignored her for over a decade. As she exits the building, an elderly man claiming to be a proxy lawyer stops her, saying her father left an estate that needs to be transferred. The lawyer takes her to a rundown bar, telling her it has over 400 years of history and her father had been living there all these years. As Iris explores the bar, she notices burn marks on the hallway floor and finds the basement's wooden door, carved with symbols. Very eerie. The lawyer says he can help find a buyer once she signs to accept the inheritance. This is a heavenly fortune for poor Iris, and signs her name to an ancient deed. As the lawyer leaves, he mentions that her father left some personal belongings and the bar keys, which he will have someone deliver the next day. Iris was ready to settle down on the couch for the night, but she was suddenly woken up in the middle of the night by an alarm bell and the sound of someone walking downstairs. She uses her phone to light the way and follows the noise to the basement door, hearing scratching sounds from inside, but she doesn't have the keys to open it. At that moment, a shadow drifts by in the bar, and Iris walks towards it to find a man standing in the darkness. Neil explains he's not a bad person, he just wants to see his wife in the basement one last time. Upon learning Iris is the new owner, he puts $2,000 on the table. Iris thinks he's joking until Neil takes out another $2,000, insisting he's not crazy. Others have come here for the same reason before. Although Iris is frightened, the money is too tempting, so she agrees to let him come back once she gets the keys the next day. Iris's friend Katie learns she has inherited a bar and immediately drives over. Iris tells her about her arrangement with Neil, and Katie worries about letting a stranger in, fearing he might be a lunatic. But Iris is convinced from Neil's few words that many others have visited before and paid her father. Since she plans to sell the bar soon, why not make some money before that? That night, Neil arrives as promised, and Iris uses the keys to open the basement door, finding it empty except for two chairs in the middle. Neil seems to know what to do and heads towards a dark crack in the wall, calling for the person inside to come out. But there is no response for a long time. Just as Iris thinks it's all a joke, a figure appears at the crack, her head covered with a paper bag, making eerie hissing sounds. Katie, terrified, immediately yells for Iris to run, but Iris stands still, watching. Neil makes his request. His wife recently died in a car accident, and he wants to say his final goodbye, but the sack-headed figure ignores him and instead walks towards Iris. Terrified, Iris hastily tells the figure not to come closer, and to her surprise, it obeys her command to back away. Neil rushes her to direct the weirdo to sit in the center chair, while he himself pulls out a ring and gives it to the weirdo, saying he wants to meet his wife. The freak reveals her mouth to swallow the ring in one gulp. Neil looked at the constantly hissing freak and then remembered that he had forgotten a step and immediately tied she up with the straps from the chair. Just after tying it up, the strange man let out a loud hissing sound, and his originally wrinkled palms returned to their whiteness. Neil, crying, steps forward and pulls off the sack, only to find not his wife inside but his mother. To his utter disbelief, overwhelmed, he demands Iris try again, and his mother then realizes the man in front of her is her son. Originally, Neil's mother had died in the bathtub 23 years ago, a death the police deemed a suicide. Abandoned by his mother, Neil could never forgive her, but he wondered why she chose to end her life. As she spoke, tears began to flow. At that moment, Neil was shocked to see liquid flowing from a crack in the wall, and his mother's head eerily lifted.
The truth is, I couldn't stand the sight of you. You ruined my life. Is that hard to hear, sweet boy? I never wanted to be a mother.
Neil had never kissed her as a child, so her dying wish was for a kiss from him.
But now you're grown, and you owe your mother a kiss.
Terrified by his mother, Neil turned his head, but she had vanished from the chair. As the three were pondering, his mother suddenly tackled him from the ceiling, pouring out her grievances. It was only after Katie's prompting that Iris gave the order to stop and put the paper bag over the freak's head, then ordered her back inside. The freak looked to Iris reluctantly, but obeyed her order. Neil then realized that the ring he offered was actually given to his wife by his mother, explaining why it summoned her. He wanted to retrieve more of his wife's possessions to try again, regardless of the cost. But the recent ordeal left Iris unsettled. What was the point of speaking with the dead for just a few minutes when they couldn't be brought back to life? Neil leaves his address on his way out, telling Iris to come and see him if she changes her mind. He just wants to say goodbye to his dead wife. That night, Iris noticed a videotape among her father's belongings. Iris then learns that the freak in the basement has been there for hundreds of years, and that the freak will do the bidding of whomever signs the title deed to become the owner of the bar, but advises her not to enter the power of the walls. The freak has the ability to communicate with the dead, but it only lasts for 2 minutes and grows stronger as it is used more often, eventually taking complete control of the homeowner's mind. And there is no way to escape if you want to. He's tried to get out of the place, only to have bad luck and death come his way more often than not, forcing him to return to the pub, where even his own daughter has been afraid to contact him for 20 years. After learning everything, Iris feels that it took her father 20 years to get into trouble, and that she doesn't want to leave the pub after owning it so easily. Intending to use it as a cash cow to make some money, they decide to make a fortune from Neil and then leave the place. Initially worried, Katie is eventually persuaded by Iris. For safety, Iris paints a line on the basement steps with the instruction not to cross it and repeats her command towards the opening. Following the note, Iris finds Neil's mansion and learns from him that her father had sustained himself with this method for a long time. He also found out about it from a close friend of a loved one who died of cancer. That's all the more reason for Iris to think it's okay to do it again. The trio return to the basement of the pub, and after Neil gives his late wife's necklace to the weirdo for him to swallow, this time the hood is removed and his wife does appear. His wife, looking confused, doesn't remember what happened until Neil mentions the car accident, making her recall her death. Neil, tearfully, tells her that she died in that accident. While it's hard to explain now, he wants to know who she was going to meet that day by driving out. Neil is trying to find out if his wife is cheating on him, which she hastens to deny. Under Neil's pressing, the 2-minute timer soon runs out, but he refuses to end the session. Like before, his wife's appearance begins to change. Iris runs forward to put the sack back on, but the chair moves backward on its own. The scene of the car accident is then recreated. Regaining consciousness, his wife crouches in a dark corner crying, saying she didn't want to die. Approaching her, Iris suddenly shows a horrifying face and pins her to the ground, covering her mouth to prevent her from commanding Iris. Stammering, Iris manages to tell her to go back, which makes her leave Iris's body, but the weirdo said something that creeped her out at that moment.
Still you don't understand. We're both prisoners.
Suddenly he tore off his face skin, and instead of flesh and blood, there was a sack head inside. Iris steps forward, choking him, demanding to know what he did to her father, but soon finds herself unable to breathe. Before collapsing, Iris removes the figure's sack, horrified to discover the person inside is herself. Iris wakes from a nightmare, the rope of the basement key tightly wrapped around her neck. She struggles to the bathroom to get scissors from her makeup bag but soon collapses from asphyxiation, fortunately saved by Katie cutting the rope. Though Neil spoke with his wife's spirit, he had deceived Iris, actually wanting to know who his wife was with when she left him, prompting Katie to throw him out. At night, Iris dreams about the night her father died, when he used the sack-headed figure to summon her mother. From their conversation, she learns that her father was terminally ill and tired of being trapped there, wanting to explain things to his daughter before dying, and just wanting to say goodbye to his wife before leaving. As the 2-minute timer goes off, his wife warns him, reminding him of what happened last time he left the bar to be with her, leading to his death from the ensuing curse. But her father has a better idea. He pours gasoline around her, planning to burn her and the entire bar to rid anyone of the curse. The father was just about to pull out his lighter when the light bulb blew. As he lit the lighter, he realized that his wife was smiling and caressing his face, and the lighter in his hand fell to the floor in shock, immediately igniting a fire that burned his body. The father struggled to escape the basement and then burned to death in the hallway. The next day, Katie, afraid of the weirdo in the basement, uses a gas can to barricade the wooden door, but just as she turns her head to leave, the picture frame on the wall behind her falls down. Picking up the photo, she sees a name on the back, someone who was also an owner of the bar. She researches him online, finding his life was full of tragedy, with a home in the outskirts of Violating. Just as she closes her laptop, she sees him sitting at the bar, his eyes bloodshot staring at her, but he vanishes eerily when she grabs a stick. The two visit the lawyer's office again only to find it empty. Katie confirms the man in the photo is the lawyer, but the photo was taken 100 years ago, and Katie thinks the situation is just like her father mentioned in the videotape. Iris almost strangled to death on the bathroom floor, yet she seemed unwilling to leave the place. Iris, upset with Katie for caring about her, snaps that she won't leave until she makes enough money, having lost her mother young and burdened with such a father, and has been poor all her life. Unlike Katie, who grew up with nothing to eat and nothing to wear and doesn't know how she feels at all. Hurt by Iris's words, Katie quietly packs her things, but after sitting in her car, she reflects on their years of friendship and decides she can't just walk away like this. Following the clues given in the photo, she arrives at an old house in the outskirts of Violating. On the walls, see the other side's research on the basement freaks from back in the day, and collect them all. Meanwhile, in the basement of the pub, Iris feeds her father's watch relic to the freaks. Her father, surprised to see his daughter, remembers clearly burning the place down before his death. He didn't want her involved and left no will. He killed his wife back then when he went to the mother and daughter once in disbelief. He returned here to protect Iris. Iris wondered, didn't the freaks obey their master's control?
She gets inside your head, and then the question is who's listening to who? How is the same? Yeah, here you are, talking to me.
She shakes her head, saying she'll sell the bar and leave to prevent similar things from happening to her. But her father explains that as long as her name is on the deed, she can't escape, nor can she be killed. The only option is not to use she powers. Iris accuses her father of making $2,000 in just 2 minutes using these powers, to which he regretfully admits he only understood the consequences at the point of death. As the 2-minute timer goes off nearby, her father's demeanor changes, becoming cold and harsh toward her. Finally, his body ignites, suffering the agony he faced before death. Looking at Iris, he says he's disappointed everyone who loved him and everyone he loved, hoping for her forgiveness but pleading with her never to summon she again. Tears streaming, Iris replaces the sack over her father's head and locks the basement door again. This time, she heeds her father's advice, attempting to burn the deed.
You're a prisoner. As soon as you signed your name on that deed.
To her horror, the deed is impervious to flames.
You can't escape this place now. Wherever you go, she will haunt you until you come back. And we all come back. We are the cursed ones.
Realizing the truth, Iris drowns her sorrows in alcohol and collapses drunk in the bathroom. Katie returns to the pub with the information she found, only to realize she can't contact Iris. She cautiously enters the basement to find Iris but discovers a watch on the floor. She wonders what has happened to Iris, and the weirdo appears behind her. She panics and runs away, but the weirdo rips a piece of information out of her bag and puts it in his mouth. Just as Katie steps toward the stairs, weirdo stops her and removes its sack, revealing itself to be the bar's former owner. The former owner explains that 400 years ago, an ancient brotherhood discovered a woman who could summon the dead and tried to exploit her abilities. After she refused, they branded her a witch and burned her at the stake, but death did not take her. Resurrected, the woman embarked on a vicious revenge, spreading plague and disease. To stop her, the brotherhood performed a dark ritual, trapping her in this underground tomb. But centuries later, their descendants ignored the ancestors' warnings, opening the tomb to use her abilities to communicate with the dead. The more they used her, the stronger her powers grew. Eventually, she broke free and killed most of them, leaving only a guardian to communicate with the outside world. Anyone who signs the deed inherits the curse. Katie explains that Iris signed the deed unaware of these details, but the man looks at her in surprise, questioning if she isn't the bar's owner.
There are no answers for you here. There is only
The next morning, A hungover Iris was woken up by the vibrating of her phone, which carried Katie's desperate pleas for help, saying she was captured by the sack-headed monster in the basement. Rushing to the basement, Iris heard Katie's cries for help coming from a hole in the wall. She was just about to go in with her oil lamp when her mind remembered her father's warning to stay away from the black hole. Despite the warning, Iris couldn't leave Katie and ventured in. Following the sounds, she found her friend deep inside, but on their way out, the two pass a room with a body on the floor. Ignoring Katie's protests, Iris went forward to check and was horrified to discover that the body was Katie's, indicating that the Katie she was with was the monster in disguise. Turning around, the fake Katie had vanished. Someone crawled out from the top of the cave, and Iris desperately ran towards the exit, the creature's screams echoing behind her. Upon escaping the hole, she ran into Neil, who helped her get out of the basement, devastated by Katie's death. Neil gave her some pills to calm her nerves. That night, Iris woke up to find Neil missing and realized he had drugged her to go back to the sack-headed monster. At the basement door, she heard Neil negotiating with the monster, promising not to bind it if it allowed him one more communication with his wife, after which it would be free. The strange man ate his wife's relics and changed again. This time she confronts Neil instead, having had a fight with him on the day of her car accident, driving away from home dizzy and suspecting that Neil drugged the wine she drank to cause her death.
I was going to leave you because I was scared. Raising my child in that home.
It turned out Neil's wife was pregnant at her time of death. She touched Neil's face and said they could still be together, but they had to get rid of the guardian, Iris. Neil turned and saw Iris, and immediately chased after her. She tried to call the police but had no signal and could only flee to the rooftop through a window. Neil caught up quickly. Iris, crying, begged him to spare her, willing to change the owner's name on the deed to his. Neil, however, feels that she knows about his wife's death and has no choice but to silence her as well. Iris is about to be choked to death when she picks up a piece of masonry and smashes it into Neil's head before fleeing towards the fire escape. Neil caught up and grabbed her. That's how Iris died. Neil went downstairs and moved her phone and body to the basement. Now that Iris was dead, all he needed was for the sack-headed monster to consume her phone to put her name on the deed. Removing the sack, Iris appeared before him. Neil explains that he doesn't want this to happen either, and that it's stupid to have such power and not use it, and pulls out the deed to the house for her to transfer it to him.
Do you not understand?
My name is still on the deed. I am still her master.
Now Iris was her, and she was Iris. Iris then takes on his mother's form, and after tackling him to the ground, no spitting this time, she just twists his hands. The strange man changed into his wife again. Iris drags the big chair over to the badly injured Neil and raises it high in the air. Images begin to come to Neil's mind of how both he and Iris have actually been mind-controlled by the freak since the night he came to the pub to find Iris's father, using their constant use of their abilities to empower themselves. Iris's father is dying of a disease, so the freak seizes the opportunity to trick Iris into coming here, before guiding Neil to kill Iris and take over the other man's body. From then on, she regained true freedom. After knocking Neil to death with a chair, the occupied Iris leaves her cage for the first time in 400 years. As the entire pub is consumed by a raging fire, the odd man out will live on in the world under the identity of Iris,